The only people making it divisive are the Democrats, who seem to be criticizing every single thing Trump wants to do to celebrate the country's birthday. They're fun haters. They're fun vacuums. They don't love America as much as Donald Trump. They're still sourpusses that he's the president while this awesome celebration is going on. That's what I think's happening.
Jamal is a Democrat.
Far-right MAGA commentator Scott Jennings appeared as a guest on Kaitlan Collins' CNN show to debate with Jamal Simmons over the controversial UFC event that Donald Trump plans to host at the White House, a move many see as part of the poorly handled preparations for the country's 250th anniversary celebration. We're going to look at several moments from this debate between Scott Jennings and Jamal Simmons on Kaitlan Collins' show, and I'll also be sharing my thoughts on everything that was said. Let's get right into it.
Tonight we're learning more about who exactly has made the invite list for President Trump's made-for-TV UFC event at the White House next month. The Pentagon is now recruiting uniformed troops to attend, but not all of them qualify. In the words of one defense official summing up the policy to CNN, they said, quote, "No fatties." Memos reviewed by CNN show that the tickets will only be given to service members who meet a certain waist-to-height ratio. A source at the Pentagon said that senior leaders, quote, "want attendees to look good on camera during the event." And the source added, basically, no fat soldiers. With construction underway on the White House South Lawn to build the massive cage to set up for this event on June 14th, here's a look inside how the event came to be. That massive structure that is dwarfing the White House behind me isn't part of President Trump's large-scale renovation of Washington that's been underway now for months, but is instead only temporary and is what UFC has actually dubbed the Claw. It's being erected on the South Lawn of the White House ahead of the UFC fight that is scheduled to be held here on June 14th on the South Lawn, which happens to be President Trump's birthday and is part of the events leading up to the celebration of America's 250th birthday. It's an idea that UFC President Dana White says President Trump suggested to him last summer.
We're literally at a fight, and I can't remember if it was New Jersey or Miami. And he looks at me in the middle of the fight and says, "You know what? We should do a fight at the White House." And I'm like, yes, we should do a fight at the White House.
That fight, a first in the nation's history to ever be hosted on the White House South Lawn.
All people invited, our country is invited to this, it's free.
The renderings for the event, UFC Freedom 250, showcase a massive display, including a fighting cage known as the Octagon, just outside the president's bedroom window. A huge red, white, and blue lighting structure, dubbed the Claw, towers overhead, and there will be massive TV screens and seating for a watch party on the ellipse that can accommodate approximately 85,000 fans.
And 100,000 people in the back where they're putting up 8 or 10 very big screens.
There will be a press conference at the Lincoln Memorial, and weigh-ins will take place at the ellipse the day before.
UFC is going to be here. Dana White, the great Dana White, he's building literally a stadium, a 5,000-seat arena right outside the front door of the White House.
The administration is calling the mixed martial arts event a showcase of American greatness.
This will be the greatest show on earth.
But critics argue it's out of touch, with California Governor Gavin Newsom sarcastically writing, "Thank God they are focused on the priorities of all Americans." Asked about who's paying for all of it, the White House responded to those questions on social media with 3 letters. Quote, UFC. There is one thing that the UFC CEO, Dana White, is worried about. The weather.
I hate outdoors. Outdoors is just way too unpredictable. If it rains, we're going. If it snows, we're going. The only thing that will stop us is lightning.
Dana White is a longtime friend of the president's, speaking at the last 3 Republican national conventions while praising his early support for the UFC.
Donald was the first guy that recognized the potential that we saw in the UFC and encouraged us to build our business.
Now, White will be by Trump's side when the South Lawn is filled with fans. A White House official told CNN that a third of the tickets are reserved for military members and their family, a third for White House staff and their family, and a third for VIPs.
I have never seen anybody want anything so much as people want those tickets. It's a one of a kind. Certainly one of a kind. My political sources are here. Jamal Simmons worked in the Biden White House. Scott Jennings served under President George W. Bush and is inexplicably joining us from a baseball stadium tonight. Jamal, I'm going to start with you since you're in studio. What is your take on the Pentagon putting out these restrictions for ticket recipients here?
Well, first of all, let me start here. When you win the White House, you get to have whatever event you want to have at the White House. I know there are some people who think this is probably not the greatest event for the president to have, but it is in line with his base. It's in line with his brand. So just as a communications professional, I understand why they did it. Now, more military members should have a chance to participate in this. It shouldn't be whether or not you meet a. I understand some people aren't being flown in They have tickets, but they've got to get themselves there. If I were the White House, I would get military members to this event if they really want to show their commitment to it and not just let it be for the people who are Washington based or people who can afford to get to the White House.
Yeah. I mean, Scott, do you think that there should be height and weight restrictions on which members of the military can come?
Look, I didn't know much about this until we decided to do this conversation. I asked the White House point blank, is this true? And I was told, quote, fake news from the Washington Post. So without being in the middle of it, I can only tell you what I've been told by the White House is that there are no restrictions. They are inviting members of the military. They're excited to have members of the military there. And as for these Democrats who are criticizing this, why do they have to be such fun vacuums? This is cool. Teddy Roosevelt had boxing matches at the White House. Donald Trump is the modern Teddy Roosevelt. And I agree with Jamal. When you win the White House, you get to do things at the White House. This is very in line with the president's brand. And it's cool, which I guess is why Democrats hate it.
Well, I mean, Jamal is a Democrat, and he says that it's fine with having it. But there's literally a memo that said ticket recipients are required to meet the Department of War waist to height ratio standard of less than 0.55, as well as all service-specific physical fitness test requirements. That means troops would have to have a maximum 37-inch waist for the average man and a 35-inch waist for the average woman. I mean, there's a memo on it.
Well, look, I know the military has standards on physical fitness. Beyond that, I don't know what to say about it other than the White House says they're happy to have military members come to this awesome event at the White House. And it sounds to me like it's nitpicky and will find a way to criticize something that otherwise was kind of a communication stroke of genius. So, look, I'm not in the middle of who they're inviting or how they're inviting it, but I think it's pretty awesome they're bringing members of the military.
I think it's pretty ironic for Scott Jennings to claim that Democrats don't know how to have fun and only complain whenever something enjoyable happens. What do we hear after the Super Bowl halftime show every single year? It's usually Republicans, MAGA supporters, and commentators like Scott Jennings spending days complaining about it. We saw the same reaction when Bad Bunny performed, with many people in the MAGA movement completely losing their minds over it. So the idea that Democrats are the ones who don't like fun doesn't really hold up. As for the service members, if there really is a weight or waist size requirement, that honestly sounds completely in line with Trump. He's someone who seems very focused on appearance and likes the people around him to fit a certain image, so it wouldn't be surprising if that was part of the thinking. Still, it seems like a strange decision to make, especially when it creates unnecessary controversy and backlash. Realistically, how much screen time are service members even going to get during the event? It doesn't seem like they'll be featured on television enough for something like that to matter in the first place. Nobody is going to sit there and say, hey, look, that military member is overweight. I just don't see that happening. But it does seem very much in line with Trump, someone who expects a certain appearance from everyone around him while not necessarily holding himself to the same standard. As for the entertainment side of this, I'm not really a UFC fan myself, and I don't fully understand the appeal, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having some fun while also addressing the real issues facing the country. The problem is that Trump doesn't appear to be focused on the challenges that affect everyday Americans. At the same time, I don't think people should spend all their time dwelling on negativity. If the plans for the 250th anniversary included concerts with genuinely popular performers, that would be perfectly reasonable. The issue is that many major acts don't want to be associated with Donald Trump. When it comes to the UFC event specifically, I did a quick search and found estimates suggesting that somewhere between 1.7% and 9% of American adults regularly watch UFC or consider themselves fans. That makes this another one of those divisive ideas, simply because more than 90% of Americans have little to no interest in UFC. As a result, it comes across less like an event designed to bring the country together and more like another opportunity to feed Donald Trump's ego rather than create something that benefits or appeals to the nation as a whole.
I got to say that point does make it sound like they're trying to use members of the military as props. They're using them as backdrop for the president's political priorities. That part, I would fix that. They need to let people come in the military because we're honoring them for their service, not for their looks.
Well, I mean, the other part of this is part of the celebration in the lead up to America 250, Jamal. And obviously on this front, in terms of what this looks like, is huge celebrations that they're planning for America 250, a big concert that's supposed to take place. Several of the artists, though, who were announced to perform are now pulling out of this. And just a few of them, Morris Day wrote on Facebook, it's a no for me. We've got Bret Michaels citing a similar issue, saying that unfortunately what was presented to us as a celebration of our country has evolved into something much more divisive than what I agreed to be a part of. Others have said, Young MC, I have informed my agents that I will not be performing. They were not told about any political involvement in this event. I mean, you could see on and on. There are multiple artists here who say, I thought this was going to be just a patriotic celebration and now fear that it is becoming political.
Yeah, well, one of the artists that he had booked was Milli Vanilli, who were notorious for being a fake Grammy recording band. And so it's a problem for an administration that I think people look at and say, what's real inside this administration? They're even booking fake music.
A fake band performing for a fake president, which feels pretty fitting when you think about it.
For the 250th anniversary, should be finding ways to bring us together. But we are finding he's doing things like wanting to produce a $250 bill with his face on it. Those aren't things that unite the country around something that we should all be cheering for. Instead, there's sort of sticking his finger in the eye of people who disagree with him at a time when he should be bringing us together.
We did hear from Vanilla Ice Scott, who said this on TikTok about the event.
Honored to do this concert with everybody. We're going to bring back the 90s. Put your dancing shoes on. We don't take anything too serious, man. We're going to bring the 90s. That's how it works. Go Ninja, go Ninja, go.
Scott, what do you make of that?
Well, I think we should all stop, collaborate, and listen to Vanilla Ice. He's excited about this, and we should all be excited about this. Now, when you're a Republican and you start dealing with Hollywood and the entertainment industry, it gets very dicey because anytime they come into contact with Republicans, all their peers and all the people out in Hollywood and that industry come down on them hard. That's obviously what's happened here. I personally would love to hear a lot of military bands. I'd love to hear patriotic marches and that kind of music. So, chasing these acts sometimes is a little bit of a risky business for Republicans. I don't know why they're pulling out. This has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with America's 250th anniversary. The only people making it divisive are the Democrats who seem to be criticizing every single thing Trump wants to do to celebrate the country's birthday. They're fun haters. They're fun vacuums. They don't love America as much as Donald Trump. They're still sourpusses that he's the president while this awesome celebration is going on. That's what I think's happening.
Jamal is a Democrat. He just said he's fine with the UFC event.
Kaitlan, I will say this. Whatever happens, Democrats are way more likely to have fun than Republicans. I think most people would agree with that.
We'll have that debate another time. Jamal Simmons, Scott Jennings, we'll leave you back to your baseball game. Thank you both for being here tonight.
And then Scott Jennings falls back on the same tired argument that Hollywood somehow hates Republicans. That's hard to take seriously when you consider that Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger are two of the biggest movie stars ever, and both have long been associated with the Republican Party. Schwarzenegger may not be a supporter of Donald Trump, but Stallone has openly backed him, and he's still getting plenty of work. The reality is that most people in Hollywood don't care whether an actor, singer, or celebrity is a Republican. What they tend to have a problem with are people who are difficult, hostile, or constantly trying to create conflict, and let's be honest, a lot of MAGA figures have built their public image around being as loud and confrontational as possible. Think about any workplace. If you had a coworker who was constantly stirring up arguments and trying to divide people, chances are you wouldn't enjoy being around them either. That's not unique to Hollywood. Hollywood had no issue with well-known Republicans like Bruce Willis or Clint Eastwood. This idea that the entertainment industry is engaged in some organized campaign against Republicans is something the MAGA movement and the right have been pushing for decades. It's similar to how Republicans have spent years attacking the media, calling journalists the enemy of the people and claiming the press is out to get them. If you're constantly attacking an industry, why would you expect that industry to treat you favorably in return? So this just feels like more of the same talking points from Scott Jennings and the MAGA crowd. And when it comes to Donald Trump, it's hard to ignore that few people have wanted acceptance from Hollywood more than he has. Yet he's always seemed to be on the outside looking in, and there are plenty of reasons for that. But let me know what you think in the comments. What are your thoughts on this UFC event and what many see as the ongoing mess surrounding the plans for the country's 250th anniversary celebration? What do you think about the point Scott Jennings made on Kaitlan Collins' show, and what did you make of Jamal Simmons' response? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.